All right, everybody. Welcome to episode 8 of the ATRL Charts podcast. I am Alexander AO, Alexander from ATRL.
Hello, it's me. I'm Her55 from ATRL.
And it's me, you Mitch, aka Aaron from ATRL as well, and we're back as a trio for this episode.
Yay, finally.
It's been a while since September. Late September was the last time. Episode 6.
I think so.
Well, episode
Whoa.
5 was the last time us three recorded. Episode 6 was the last time we had 3 people recording.
Hurricane Adele didn't start back then.
Yeah.
We didn't
It was
expect any
it
of
was
that.
yeah, it was
No.
pre hello. So here we go, episode 8, and obviously the new Hot 100 Top 10 came out today, which is why we decided to postpone this episode a day. And the big story from that, obviously, is Ariana Grande.
Yay.
Focus debuting at number 7. Largely due to very good video streams. 43 million global YouTube views in the first week. The on-demand streaming wasn't great. The sales weren't great. The airplay was nice. But it was really the video streaming that got her to number 7 this week.
Oh, Ariana, what the fuck were you thinking? Such a disappointment, this single. And no, there's nothing to do about donuts or I hate America comments. It's just the single is bad. So Problem Little Sister sold a little more than 100 key copies in the first week, and it's plummeting everywhere. I hope she focus on her career really serious and bring back some excellent material as her My Everything era. Thanks God, to be honest, thanks God, streaming is a very good friend of Ariana, and she debuted in top 10. I mean, that's what I call star power. But I hope this single dies fast and move on to second single.
Yeah, I was very shocked at the how much it sold. I mean, if we had her previous lead single to go off of, which did almost 440,000 in the first week, it wasn't too far fetched to think that she would do at least 200,000, but she barely did half of that. Like you said, and it's a wake up call. Like, this single really did not resonate with everyone, based on the sales and based on the fact that it did not live up to the hype, because she's been hyping this for almost 2 months now. We've known about Focus, the single, since the middle or beginning of September.
Yeah.
And I think that people were expecting something different, or at least something that wasn't problem
New.
It just didn't resonate well with a lot of people. I mean, I read the ATRL comments, but then I also read, people who commented on Twitter, Facebook, like on my news feed, and a lot of people had the same sentiments. Like, Ariana, what is this? I'm not feeling it, and I didn't really see too much of a complaint about the chorus, which a lot of people on ATRL was complaining about.
It's tragic.
They just commented more so on the fact that it just sounds like a rehash, and even Billboard. I mean, I know they could be messy sometimes, but even they point out the fact that it sounds like Problems. So it's not like these comments are coming straight from ATRL. It's coming from everyone. So I think we should, or her label should focus on getting out a second single maybe with the next month or so, because I don't think this single is going to have too much longevity, just based on looking at the sales right now. And it's, struggling to pretty much stay in the top 30 on iTunes. And I'm not sure if if this is going to have a lot of longevity, to be honest.
And I feel like this, people expected more simply because it was so, hyped up. You had months before the release of the single, you had some Twitter hype, some Instagram hype going around. She had that snippet. and everybody, this was definitely supposed to be the big lead single to kick off this next era.
I was
But
predicting 500,000. I mean, this is depressing. Selling just a little more than 100 key.
I wasn't predicting
Okay.
that much. But I mean, I had 300,000, but that was still way too high. And I think what you're seeing here is that the public doesn't like it when you have a young pop star like Ariana, who has plenty of
Yeah.
room to grow, staying safe with this kind of, with this focus, this problem rehash. It doesn't take her out of her comfort zone, and it's nothing that we haven't heard before from Ariana. And the public has said this is not what we want. And you look at Ariana, she's got a
Definitely.
big social media presence, a bunch
Right.
of teenagers who are gonna stream her, who are going to be loyal to her. But here's the thing: is that the Spotify performance was very lackluster. It missed the top 10
Yeah.
in its debut week on Spotify. In
And
fact,
she has the most streaming female album ever.
right, exactly. My Everything was a huge streamer on Spotify, and yet Focus couldn't even make the top 10 for 1 week. So and the sales obviously
Tragic.
the sales don't matter as much, but it's still kind of it was kind of a wake up call for Ariana for
Right.
that song, for it to only sell 100,000. But nevertheless, it is a top 10 hit, regardless if it gets treated like a buzz single next or if it actually gets pushed, which I don't think it should be pushed. I think it should be kind
Thanks God. Thanks God, she said in an interview that the album does not sound nothing like Focus.
right, which
Let's trust her.
kind of makes you think that they're not gonna, they've kind of changed their minds. They're not gonna treat it like a full-fledged lead single. In my
Yeah.
opinion, if I was Ariana's team, I would just let the single run its course.
Right.
And when it's done, which it should be done soon, considering it's already starting to drop on Spotify and iTunes pretty quickly, then you really release the real lead single, if you will, and get that era going, and you treat Focus like it's a promotional single. That's what I would do if I was Ariana's team.
Yeah, I agree. Just don't put any more money into this single. Just let it run its course and make sure that when the second single is here, just let it get ready to promote.
Yeah.
Because I think the American Music Awards are coming up in a couple weeks, and I believe she's probably gonna get booked a spot for the performance, and we don't, she could perform Focus with a medley into the second single, but I think what the best advice is, like a lot of people are saying, is to move on and don't focus literally on the single, because the return is not going to be great at all. I mean, looking at iTunes is at 25. That is not great for a lead single, no matter how you spin that. That's not great at all.
There's no excuses.
Yeah. I mean, it was handled. The release was handled well.
So well.
The hype was built. Her fan base is there.
I mean, Selena Gomez did better, and she didn't promote anything.
Yeah, and it just shows you, look, you can't just count on, you can only count on your fan base to a certain extent. Because if the song's not good enough, it's not going to become huge. You're not going to have, a song that the general public thinks is bad is going to become huge. It just doesn't work, of course. Because, it literally goes against the whole idea of charts, which is to measure the most popular songs among the public.
And you can trust. Sorry.
If you're only if you're only pleasing your fan base, which it seems like Focus isn't really garnering much praise from outside of her fan base,
Right.
then that's a problem.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of a tough situation, but you got to kind of improvise. If you're Ariana's team, you have to improvise from here, and you got to hope that she's got some. And you got to hope, if you're a fan, or not a fan, but a chart watcher who wants her to do well, that she's got better material.
Such a shame, because the music video is like the best of her, but the single is her worst.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
all right.
That's what we call a reverse Warholian experience.
Yeah,
such a
totally.
good usage of that. Art Pop's impact. I mean, still, almost 2 years later, We're still talking like this. Um,
The impact. That's what I call impact.
yep. Um, all right. So this
So,
week's Hot 100 also, Hotline Bling returns to number 2, up 1 spot, switching places. Or not switching places. But moving up to number 2, 1 spot.
yeah,
This is becoming a cultural phenomenon. The video was just parodied on SNL with Donald Trump. And
yeah,
it's continuing to pull in excellent views now that it's gotten to be on Vivo, which it should have been on Vivo several weeks ago. But anyways, it's on Vivo now. It's getting very good views. It is selling well. It is streaming well. Over 1 million on Spotify for basically the last month. This song, I think, is going to show a lot of longevity in the end.
yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah,
becoming a viral thing, and that helps a lot. And more, Drake has this loyal streaming base. To be honest, I mean, remember he almost got 20 million overall streams without the video. That's what I call power, to be honest. And now with the video is showing these increases. I mean, it's crazy. I feel kind of sad for Drake, but it's his fault. It's also his fault. Um, but I don't know. I feel sad. I mean, every week we're gonna see him at number two and number two, and I feel like that's the number two curse, to be honest.
yeah. It's sad. I mean, it's just all about timing. I mean, he couldn't have
Yeah.
predicted that Adele was gonna drop her single out of the blue, literally,
Mm,
because we heard the preview of her single on a UK television show, and then 1 week later she was on iTunes. So he couldn't. I mean, he couldn't predict that. And then he has a contract with Apple, which I believe was $20 million that he signed. So what that says is his content will be exclusive to Apple Music for a week, and then it goes live everywhere else after the 1 week.
yeah.
So again, it was just bad timing. I mean, he released the video on Apple, but then apparently Apple doesn't report streams, so that messed him up. And then he finally released it on
Mess.
Vivo, but that was the same week. We had Hello barging onto the chart. So I mean, the fact that it didn't hit number one, for chart watchers is sad, and I'm sure for Drake it is a little bit of a blow to him as well. But as you said, Hair, it doesn't take away from the fact that this is a huge song. I mean, it's been parodied everywhere. People are still talking about
Yeah.
it. I still see people making vines about it. So he has himself a legitimate hit, and it's going to stay in the top 10 for a very, very long time. And then with streaming being a huge factor on the charts now, that's just going to help him. And he's actually also selling relatively well with his single, which is I think top 5 on iTunes right now. So I mean, it's a blow. I mean, it would have been nice to see him go number one and get his first single as a lead artist. But again, the charts can be very unpredictable, and things can happen. As in Adele coming in to set fire to our faves, if you will. So there's nothing we can do about that. We just have to watch and just let her reign and just let her do what she does. But at the end of the day, Drake's number 2 hit is legitimately a hit. I mean, it didn't get overshadowed. It's still at the number 2 position, so people are still in love with the song. It's just the fact that it just came down to timing, and that's all that there is.
And I'm just going to go off on a little bit of a tangent here, just to knock Apple. If you think you're going to run a legitimate music streaming service that's going to compete with Spotify, a service that already has 100 million users, you need to be able to do the least and report video streams. It's not that
Right.
hard. You
Apple is gonna sue you.
and Actually, I love Apple. I'm recording this episode on a MacBook right now. As I speak, I have an iPhone.
Get a promo, Apple.
Um,
Get a promo.
but here's the problem: is that it's it's legitimately unfair and objectively unfair to not have those streams recorded because
Definitely.
with those streams, it is extremely likely that Drake would have had the most popular single in the country for that week. And it would have been only a 1 week number one, but it would have been a number one nevertheless. And I know that it doesn't affect how big of a hit it is, but it's something that's a major accomplishment. Drake said it himself. He wrote a whole long thing about it, thinking that he would get number one, but he didn't because Apple is too lazy. That Apple needs to get to work and start reporting video streams if they're going to be serious about this.
Right.
Because you can't. I understand that the product is only several months old, but that's not an excuse to not even be able to measure the popularity of a song, and you know that your platform is going to have a big effect on the Hot 100, so you have to be able to measure the popularity because it contributes to the accuracy of the Hot 100, and the Hot 100 is less accurate for not having those streams. And it's not just for Drake. There are plenty of other videos on Apple Music too that people are watching. So it leads to slight inaccuracies all over the chart. And back to the song, I think this could legitimately become Drake's biggest hit overall. If you look at the way that it's performing on Rhythmic Radio right now, okay, so look at Rhythmic Radio. Drake is at number one. He's well ahead of anybody else. It looks like he'll stay there for at least another 3 to 4 weeks, at least, if not into the new year, 7 or 8 weeks. I could see that happening because he's almost 3,000 spins ahead of the nearest contender. That's What Do You Mean, which is slowing down. And then below that is Here, which is increasing at a moderate pace, but, it's absolutely not a lock for number one. So honestly, this song could stay at number one for Rhythmic for a long time to come. And then Urban Radio, number one, also comfortably, nearest contender, over 2,000 spins away, slowly rising. This song is just perched at the top of those radio charts, and there's nothing in position to knock it down. So all through this month, and perhaps all through next month, we're going to see this song, or we're going to hear this song, more accurately, just constantly played on the radio, continuing to get that massive exposure, continuing to gain on overall. We're going to continue to see these memes pile up all over the place. We just got a fresh batch of them yesterday. And this song is a legitimate cultural phenomenon.
I'm agree.
And Best I Ever Had, which was released way back, when social media didn't have as much of an impact, right? Might not end up being as remembered as Hotline Bling, because Best I Ever Had is not really remembered by pop listeners the way it is remembered by rhythmic listeners.
No.
And with the way that Hotline Bling is doing on pop, which is doing great on pop, and great on just overall on every metric, I think we could really see Drake get the biggest hit of his career to date with Hotline Bling.
And it's shocking because Hotline Bling was never meant to be a single.
There you go. I mean, that's all there is to it. Just a little random release. It wasn't even the focus of that release because he released 4 songs and two of them were the Meek Mill diss tracks because that was like a big thing at the time. And then the other 2 were Hotline Bling and Right Hand. So it's just astounding, really.
No, you're right, Alex. With the radio, especially with radio, I think it's just going to be played on radio for so long, until Views from the Six comes out, which I don't know when it's going to be. It could be, at this point, I think it will be a surprise release. But I think Hotline Bling will stay at the top on radio for a long time. I think his last biggest radio hit was, what was it? Hold On, We're Going Home, which was also a crossover hit with pop, urban, and rhythmic. And I don't know how much longevity that had, but I remember hearing it on the radio a lot. But I think this single Hotline Bling with the exposure it's getting with social media and the way people are talking about it, it's just gonna keep fresh in a lot of people's minds. And then, not to mention, we have the holidays coming up, so there's a chance that this could get a nice sales boost. I'm not sure how much of a boost it'll get, but it's already over 1 million downloads here in the U.S. 2 million is definitely not out the reach. I mean, that's definitely gonna happen. Not sure how quickly that'll happen, but it's gonna happen at some point. And then obviously, you'll have to consider how much it'll sell in the long run in 2016. But
Really?
yeah, he's got another hit on his hands, very very effortlessly, blah blah blah. And it's just nice to see that he has that power and that pull for his music.
So yeah, that was and the last big story in the top 10 this week is Like I'm Gonna Lose You, which we talk about for the 7th time in 8 podcasts.
Wow.
Finally reaching the top 10 on the Hot 100. This is the definition of a sleeper hit. Was originally rumored to be released as a single back in, March, April. Officially released in May, and then just spent a bunch of months hanging around, not doing much. And like people have said on the forum, because it's not really appropriate for the summer, spring season. But now that we're in the middle of fall and speeding towards winter, the public is clearly picking up on the song. The streaming has gone up, the airplay has gone up, the sales have gone up, and this is looking like a very well-rounded hit that could potentially, blow up this December, this January, and just a very slow and steady climb, which is atypical for a pop song. I mean, you see that with these alternative crossovers, and with these, country crossovers when we have them, but not with a pop song. So it's very interesting to see the chart run of this song just kind of literally bubbling under for months. We first talked about this in July for 5-6 months before becoming big.
Right, Queen of Longevity. Congratulations to Megan Trainor. I mean, the success of this song has been unpredictable. I never imagined the song would have gone to top 10, maybe top 20, but top 10 was a big surprise. I think yeah, I agreed with what you said. It was never meant to happen on summer, and this song fits perfect on fall season and winter too. I don't know. I feel Megan Trainor has proved us wrong all the time, and that's such a good thing for her. I mean, let's recall this. This is the first album titled by Megan Trainor. The first album since Kesha's Animals to produce at least third top 10 hits on the first album, right?
And Like I'm Gonna Lose You, its success is even more impressive considering that it was kind of like a dual release with Marvin Gaye, which did not do very well. It's
And Dear Future Husband.
And songs don't usually make it that far when they're part of a dual release where the other song does badly.
Mm-hmm.
We saw that with EXO and Drunken Love, with EXO getting the short end of the stick. And we thought that we might see that again with Marvin Gaye and Like I'm Gonna Lose You. But it turns out that Like I'm Gonna Lose You has just been able to resonate with pop music listeners, as we've seen through the call-out scores, which have been very good for months. And as we've seen through the increase in Spotify streams recently and the steady position on iTunes. It's definitely one of the most surprising chart stories of the year, in my opinion.
Yes, I agree. I mean, back in June, when this got released as a single, it had no traction. The video was released. I think it rose a bit on iTunes, and it just kind of stayed there. Like it wasn't plummeting, but at the same time, it wasn't rising as fast as like All About That Bass or Lips Are Moving. So I think with this single, it just needed time to resonate like you said, Alex, and to actually, have its time to shine, because radio really didn't give it time to, to shine in the summer, because it's not really a summer song. But there are exceptions where ballads can do well in the summer, like "We Belong Together,"
Stay With Me.
"Stay With Me." So
Yeah.
it's just kind of hit or miss with these types of singles. But then I remember making a comment back on one of our earlier podcasts that said, well, maybe it just needs time to blow up in the fall. Maybe programmers are just waiting to switch their playlists and actually put this song in rotation. And that's exactly what we see happening. Like, as soon as September hit, this started to take off.
Maritías.
Right.
Maritis.
It just started. It started to take off. So I'm happy for her, and the fact that she got her third top 10 hit, and Billboard, made a nice comment saying that this is the first album, or first female album, to get at least 3 top 10 hits from their debut album since Kesha, which was Animal. And we know that, and that album spawned 4 top 10 hits, which were TikTok, Blah Blah Blah, Your Love Is My Drug, and Take It Off. And she had a huge first error, which was amazing. So it's nice to see that after so many people have, said that, oh, she's going to be a one-hit wonder, she'll be done after Bass. Then you had Lips Are Moving come in, and they say, oh no, she's going to be a 2-hit wonder. Then Dear Future Husband comes along and misses the top 10, and people already called her a flop, and she's done. Now she's back with the 4th single that has gone top 10, has not been promoted. Well, I guess it was promoted a couple weeks ago, but it has very, very little promotion, and it's hitting top 10, and it still has life attached to it, and is now picking up on Spotify, which before it was not doing well on Spotify at all. But now all of a sudden it's picking up, and I think this is obviously it's a legitimate hit because it's a top 10. But I think with the holidays coming around, I think this song will be sustained for a very long time. And I think they did well with the rollout of this, and I'm very happy for her and for Epic Records.
Friday Teenage is pressed at the fact she's now over, by the way.
Hopefully he or she is not listening to this podcast, but yes, you're right.
All right. Okay. So moving on from this week's Hot 100, which those are the 3 main storylines. Let's talk about the Billboard 200. Last week we saw the Country Music Awards effect manifest itself in grand fashion. Chris Stapleton, the big winner from that award show, for New Artist of the Year and Male Vocalist of the Year and Album of the Year, subsequently debuted at number 1. Re-entered, I must say. Re-entered the Billboard 200 at number 1 with 177,000 album equivalent units on just one day.
Wow.
And this is really unprecedented. Really unprecedented.
That's what I call a boost.
Considering
wow.
This really hasn't happened before. The CMAs hasn't really in modern history, at least, like, say, that at least in the last 10 years, 15 years to my knowledge, that this hasn't happened. You have someone who released their album, 6 months ago, and then it's resurrected by all this, by all these awards, and of course the performance is Justin Timberlake. Justin Timberlake got a huge boost for his song "Drink You Away," which reached number 3, only behind Stapleton's song "Tennessee Whiskey" and Adele. And it was an unprecedented boost. And he was at his peak. He was selling around 86% of what Adele was selling, and Adele ended up selling 635,000 this week. So that's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, it's for a second week, that's very, very remarkable. For Chris Stapleton, I was very, very shocked when I saw the HDD thread that he was going to shoot to number 1. I was like, wait, he really sold that amount in one day.
Yeah.
But another thing
Right.
that Billboard had mentioned on the Periscope earlier today is that this is the first album in history to ever re-enter the chart at number one. No other album in Billboard 200
Wow.
history has done that. So this is huge, considering one, no one knew. Well, no, a lot of people did not know who he was until he performed at the CMAs last Thursday, and then whatever he did, because I didn't watch the performance, but whatever he did really resonated with the public because obviously they ran to iTunes or to the digital retailers to purchase the album or to any store, maybe Target or wherever, to buy his album. So congratulations to him. It's just unprecedented, and for him to also, along with the albums, to move a lot of units for Tennessee Whiskey. He debuted at number 2 on the digital songs chart with the 120 something downloads, which is also unprecedented for a one day figure. But I'm sure Adele has already done that. We've seen that. But it just goes back to I guess reinforce the fact that there are people that are still actually buying music out there. It's just that if you put out something that's going to resonate with a lot of people, they're gonna buy into it, and especially with the country fan base, which is very, very loyal, and they're going to support their artists. They're going to buy their albums, buy their singles, and we just saw a huge, huge turnout with all of that, because normally if we're watching, like, let's say the American Music Awards or even like the MTV Awards, we've never seen that type of boost ever. Like, I mean, me and my chart watching days, I've never seen that.
No.
To see that, yeah, to see that with the Country Music Awards, it's like, wow, I'm speechless. There's nothing else I can really say about that. And he's predicted to be number 1 again for this week's chart, blocking Eric Church, who surprise released an album last week. So he kind of shot himself in the foot because he probably didn't see Chris Stapleton being a threat.
Yeah.
And Chris Stapleton is also blocking new releases by Ellie Goulding, Sarah Bareilles, but
Little Mix.
It's Little Mix, yeah. So it's
Yeah.
it's just I think it's that old saying is people are still buying music. If we see something like that happen within a day where predictions just change drastically, then yes, people are still buying music, and they're choosing to invest in what they like and what they're willing to support.
And Eric Church totally got burned.
Yeah.
He could have had best case scenario.
Yeah.
Best case scenario, he would have debuted at number 1 off of his own one day of sales, and then had another week at number 1, blocking the new releases this week. But instead, what happened is that Chris Stapleton just stole both of those weeks from him. Ideally, of course, this week actually turns out that Carrie Underwood had a higher total of album equivalent units than Eric Church, and so Carrie Underwood would have been number 1 if Chris Stapleton had not re-entered the chart. So Eric Church would have gotten might have gotten a week at number 1 this week if Chris Stapleton had not re-entered. So
yeah, not even Carrie Underwood, that she discount her album on iTunes to $6, and oh my god, that's such a shame, because when HDD projections were released the first of the week, they were aiming to a battle between Now 56 and Storyteller by Carrie Underwood, and they were too close to each other. The label, the Carrie's label, decides to discount the album, and she was going to be number 1 if it wasn't for Eric Church, the surprise release, and now Chris Stapleton. That it was just like, as you said, Mitch, it was speechless. I mean, no one of us saw that kind of boost. It literally went out of nowhere.
yeah,
And I think I speak for a lot of people when I say I don't know who Chris Stapleton was until he was brought up in the iTunes thread. I said, "Who is this guy?" And they said, "Oh, he
Yeah.
performed at the CMAs." I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, he must have done a really good job if he's number one on
Yeah,
iTunes."
right.
But I think this just goes to prove that things are just unpredictable in the world of prediction because as you said, Carrie Underwood was scheduled to come in at number one after the discount, but Chris Stapleton said, "No, ma'am, I'm going to get that number one album," and he did. And another thing just goes to show you that even though we make predictions, it's like things can happen. And a lot of people were predicting that a surprise release could come along. I think people were joking in the thread. We were like, "No, Carrie's going to get it," and then, bam, Chris
Like it's
Stapleton comes
impossible
in.
to sell so much in one day.
Exactly. It's just insane. I mean, I know it's probably been done before, but to see it unfold like in this, I guess, in this age or in this setting, it's like, wow. It's just, I can't describe that any other way, but I just bow down and say, congratulations, you are the king. Seriously, you are the king.
Yeah, he's owning it right
Yeah.
now. He owns iTunes number one on the albums chart.
Wow.
I took a listen. It's very good.
Okay.
It's really good.
Um,
I'm not a fan of country music, but it's a really, really good country track.
Okay.
and the album is I listened to his album on Spotify. And the album's very good. It's an excellent album, so I recommend it to anybody who's listening. Check it out. It's make sure that you don't know him as just the man who sold 177,000 in one day, because this is actually a very quality album. Okay, end of that promotional segment.
Mhm.
And we move to Ellie Goulding. Now Ellie Goulding, there's a
Oh,
lot of confusion over
oh,
over her
Ellie.
numbers this week. She's projected to debut with around 50,000 album equivalent units, which is an increase from her last album, Halcyon. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yeah, that's
Which sold
Also,
34,000 copies in its first week.
yeah.
And a lot of people are saying, and rightly saying, that this is a much weaker sales climate than 2012, which it is. 2012 is the peak of digital music sales. And Ellie does not have Ellie didn't have too much momentum coming into this release because Love Me Like You Do basically had months to die down. The song Love Me Like You Do peaked in March and pretty much died down by June. And we had July, August, September, October to cool off from that. So she's kind of starting fresh. On the other side, we have people saying that she should have debuted with a lot more, and that this is an underwhelming performance for an artist who has seemingly been elevated into the public consciousness. So what do we think about Ellie's numbers?
In my opinion, they are bad numbers, and I'll tell you why. I mean, Love Me Like You Do just gave just gave a huge momentum to Ellie Goulding. She became a global force with that song. And just releasing this album and getting just a little more than her previous than the Halcyon album, it's just disappointing. And I think maybe a valid excuse could be the expensive cost of this album. It's like almost $20. I mean, because it's a long album. But besides the fact, I feel she could increase, and she's not showing that increase on her base, or at least on her audience. And it's not like, and the worst part is that she sold out with this album. I mean, her sound changed to a commercial pop sound, which shows she wants to sell more, but she's not doing that.
Yeah, I think with this album, I was a bit shocked with the numbers when I saw them, but then I was like, you know what?
It's Ellie.
She's Ellie Goulding.
She's never been
Her
an album seller. Yeah, right.
right, exactly. She's proven herself to
Yeah,
be
you're right.
an album seller. So when I looked at the numbers, I said, "Wow, really?" But then I was like, "Okay, she's never had an impressive first week."
Yeah.
You know, if we look back with Halcyon, which did
Halcyon.
35,000 the first week, even that was at the time was kind of unimpressive considering that she was coming off from Lights, which was huge.
Yeah.
But then you had to tell yourself, okay, well, her previous era was not really that stellar. So I think she's in a position now where she's growing and still getting to, I guess, be introduced or really, really exposed to the general public. Because yes, I know Lights was, or Love Me Like You Do was huge. But the hype, as we just said, it died down. That was months ago. Now she comes back with a new single, On My Mind, which is completely different from the types of singles that we've heard from her in a while. So I don't know if she's lost a few fans or gained a few fans in the process, but I think she's in the process of steadily building her fan base and her listening public here in the U.S. In the UK, it may be a different story because I know she's huge there. But here in the
Yeah.
U.S., I think she still needs time to really, honestly, to be put into the general public, And I do think
Yeah, she's
that,
not well known, to be honest.
right, and I think with this album, because her last album actually went gold, which I was surprised to find out about. This album could very well have longevity as well and end up going gold, over time. But I don't think that we should automatically, discount these numbers like it's really, really bad because she still needs, I guess, time to build in. And then let's just say it, On My Mind really isn't a huge hit right now. I mean, it just came out literally about a month ago, and typically normal album or lead singles to album release cycles is about 1 to 2 months. I mean, unless you're Adele, who's about to release very, very soon, or if you're like, a typical pop girl who normally, uses about 2 months to get the single out there, promote it, go on radio tours and everything. Ellie really hasn't had that. And according to a lot of her fans, she hasn't really promoted this single in the U.S. at
It's
all.
true. There's been no performance. Actually, not just On My Mind, but Love Me Like You Do.
Because she's not a good
She
performer
hasn't had a
anyway.
televised. She hasn't had a televised performance this year, which
So,
is
yeah.
that's really saying something. Considering
Right.
considering how big of a hit Love Me Like You Do was, and considering how big of a hit she wants On My Mind to be. So
Mhm.
the lack of promotion, I think, tells us a couple things. One, I think it tells us that I think that I guess the focus for Ellie's team is again, as it was with Halcyon, is for the longevity, and the goal is not necessarily to get a number one smash hit, and the goal is not necessarily to push a song to shove a song down the GP's throat. Like Love Me Like You Do was totally organic, right? And she's not gonna go the way of The Weeknd. The Weeknd obviously had a similar single that from the same soundtrack, Earned It, that was another organic hit. And then he decided that he'd go all out. And so he released Can't Feel My Face, got to number one for a few weeks, absolutely performed at a lot of places, VMAs, tons of exposure. And right now it's looking like Ellie is kind of apprehensive towards that approach, and instead choosing to just kind of say, okay, here's my album, here's my single, okay, and we'll see how it does. And honestly, this debut week shows that her fan base really hasn't grown that much since 2012, which is kind of
It's
surprising.
not good.
It's kind of surprising considering Love Me Like You Do was very big at its peak. A big hit at its peak. And although it might miss the top 10 year end, it's still a big hit. So I guess my takeaway from this is that it's only a disappointment if you look at this album like Ellie was trying to win the general public over and gain more support from them. If you just see this album as kind of, a more personal project, and not necessarily going for success and going for the mainstream and selling out, then the numbers are fine. But if you think that this is a sellout, which it is arguably, that like the songs on the album are arguably constructed so as to appeal to the general public, it could be argued. It would be an interesting point of contention to debate. But if you think that that's the purpose behind this album, then yes, this is a disappointment to only debut with 50K on the 200, on the Billboard 200.
We'll see what happens. I mean, she has a promo lineup in the US. She's scheduled to perform at the Victoria's Secret fashion show. So, and that's a huge platform. So we'll see what happens with this era.
Yeah, speaking of Victoria's Secret, yeah, I think she actually took Rihanna's place.
Yep.
Yeah.
A huge mess, but you know,
Bitch better have her money.
See, I feel so bad for the Navy. I really do.
I mean, it's
Pray for RA, please.
It's comical.
Keep
at
praying.
This point. Literally everything that could go wrong for them going wrong.
Yeah, I don't care anymore. I mean, I feel like it doesn't exist. I mean, since I just
first
watch it on iTunes.
Ridiculous. First, that baffling album cover, which to me doesn't make sense. But and the whole idea of Braille. I mean, I'm trying hard to wrap my head around Rihanna's motivation this era, and I'm not able to. She released 3 songs that are very different in nature, and now is deciding to kind of just pull out of a major promo appearance. We saw that with Taylor Swift's Style last year. The Victoria's Secret performance really helped it achieve single status, right? Style obviously surged on iTunes following the show, and then it became, this hit single, this top 10 hit, number 1 pop radio hit. So this show can have a big impact. And to see Rihanna pull out of it is frankly shocking.
Yeah.
2012, I believe, she performed there.
Yeah. She did Diamonds.
Yeah. And that was a big promo spot for her at the time. And it could be a big promo spot for her now, for her, whatever you want to call it. I mean, technically not a lead single if 4 or 5 Seconds and Bitch Better Have My Money are going to be on the album. But, single that's going to push the album. And it continues to make people concerned that this album isn't finished, that not everything's been recorded, that the direction hasn't, that maybe the songs included on the album hasn't been finalized, or the order, or the promotional strategy. Could be any one of these things that they haven't finalized, and that's why we're getting all these pushbacks. But it's very mysterious. There's almost a layer of secrecy to it, which the Rihanna's fan base is not used to.
Yeah.
So, we'll have to continue to follow the story. But in the meantime, it is now time for our segment, Will It Go Top 10, which we do every podcast. Take a few songs, analyze where they are on the charts, say whether they'll go top 10 or not. We make predictions. And the first song that we cover this week has been flying under the radar, doing very well on Spotify, recently achieving a new peak. And it is called White Iverson by Post Malone.
Iverson. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it looks like a top 10 hit for me. I don't see, honestly, I don't see it going to top. I mean, no. Oh my God, I'm wrong. It looks like a top 20 hit for me. I don't see it to going top 10. Sales are kind of lacking, and I don't see pop's radio support, which would be necessary if it's not showing massive streaming numbers.
White Iverson. I mean, I was given, I guess, based on right now, I guess like 50-60%. It's rising on urban and rhythmic radio, and the sales, I mean, are like in the top 40 on iTunes. But I guess it's kind of hard to say right now, because a lot of it is riding very on its sales, and since it's doing well on Spotify, I think that's going to help it out to rise on the charts. I'm not sure how the video is doing, if it has a video. Um, but I think a lot of it is, like you said, it's going to ride on how well it does or how well it continues to do on Spotify. But yeah, I've seen it on the top 50 on Spotify for a number of days now. So that's a really good sign considering that it hasn't really been, I guess, plugged into the public just yet, except for urban and rhythmic radio. But I guess it all lies with if it comes in um, with pop radio. And this year, pop radio has been very leaning towards urban rhythmic tracks, as we've seen. I mean, look at Hotline. Well, yeah, not the pop listeners.
That's a problem.
It's just, I guess it depends on how receptive the listeners are if it begins to get any pop radio play. I mean,
Only the Hills.
The Hills, which was a very much an outlier. Because
Exception, yeah.
A song like that, you know, no, I mean, it's
You
very
never
urban.
imagine.
It's very urban driven. So I thought the call out scores would be bad, but they were actually really, really good. I was like, oh wow, okay. But that was just a specific, one timer. But going back to White Iverson, I would say 50-50 right now. I just would like to see how well it continues to do on Spotify and if it can actually, hold up its sales.
And I'm looking at the YouTube views for White Iverson, and they're actually very good.
It's doing nice,
compared to a month ago. It's pulling it's pulling around 800,000 YouTube views per day this week. But a few weeks ago it was pulling around 500,000. A few weeks before that it was pulling around 300,000. So October 1st it only pulled in 260,000, and November 7th, which is the most recent day that I can access with this Chrome extension that Hair gladly
Yay.
showed me,
You're welcome.
834,731, which is a tripling. So in a month, it's tripled its daily YouTube views, which is very impressive. So I think if this song goes top 10, it's going to be on the basis of streaming, of course, which is not surprising considering its nature as an urban song. So we'll see if it can get that streaming that it needs. Right now, I'm only going to say 30%, because it still needs to sell more. It's barely inside the top 40 on iTunes at number 39.
It's a very good song. I hope he makes good.
And I think, and I agree, I think it's a good song as well. And I think it needs to start getting a better weekend effect. Its weekend effect has been kind of moderate. A better one would really help. Right now it's number 47 on overall radio, but that's only because it's getting played by just Rhythmic and Urban. It's number 7 on Rhythmic Radio, which is pretty good. Meanwhile,
and do you think
15 on Urban?
Do you think pop radio is gonna be supportive or less receptive with this song?
Nope.
Yeah.
It won't happen.
Oh. Yeah, I agree. And that's gonna be a problem for that song. That's why I don't see it going to top 10.
And with all these urban songs, right, you have a really big advantage in streaming, but just a really big disadvantage at radio, because and when you lack that pop radio support, right, you lack that exposure. Because we've talked about this before, radio doesn't just count for the chart. It counts for, the exposure that a song is going to receive, right, which in turn influences sales and streaming. So when you're not getting played on pop radio, when you're only getting played on Rhythmic and Urban, a whole demographic is missing out on your song. So in this case, it's the pop demographic, right? All these pop music listeners that maybe aren't really closely following the pop music scene like we are, they might not know anything about White Iverson, right? And that's understandable because it's not getting played on pop radio, right? And it's not really popular among their demographic, so it's going to remain confined to that rhythmic urban community. And it's hard to go top 10 with that. We saw that with Jumpman, which, despite pulling excellent streaming numbers, still hasn't gone top 10 yet. And we talked about last podcast how it may or may not end up going top 10 in the future. And White Iverson is doing worse than Jumpman by a lot, actually. So that's why I'm keeping his chances at 30% for now. But this is definitely an intriguing case that we'll keep tabs on in the future. Because it's a hit. I mean, it is a hit. It's a hit that I didn't see.
It is.
Interesting. Um, next song
Next song.
um,
Yeah.
is also an urban song, and it is by Travis Scott, and it is called Antidote, which is similar situation to White Iverson. It's doing well on Spotify. It's doing well on radio. Actually, doing better on urban radio, but worse on rhythmic than White Iverson. This is really just a situation.
I think this Antidote song has potential to be top 10. I think a lot of it, I've heard it on Spotify a couple of times. This is a very catchy song. And at first I thought it was Kanye. I was like, did he release a track? And
I thought it was Wiz Khalifa at first.
So it's really
Yeah, right. And with the cover art, it looks just like Wiz Khalifa.
He does. You know, I look
King
at
of Pop.
It really doesn't surprise me that he is signed to Taylor Gang, because that he totally is like, it sounds a lot like Wiz Khalifa, and that's actually a positive considering that radio really supports Wiz Khalifa.
Yeah, right. And he just, Wiz Khalifa just came off one of the biggest hits of the year. Excuse me. So I think this will go top 10. It may be a slow climber. Because right now it's just, obviously urban and rhythmic radio supported. And
we can rule out pop. Like, it's not going to get played on pop. But
No, definitely.
But I think that Antidote definitely has the potential to, go viral. And so does White Iverson. So does White Iverson. But Antidote sounds more familiar. It sounds like Wiz Khalifa. And I could definitely see that. If somebody out there makes some Vine or some video that is really funny, that works in the song, it could totally go top 10. But I'm not going to give Antidote... I guess I'll give Antidote the same kind of 30% chance, because until we see that, that social media buzz building up around the song, and seeping into the mainstream, then I don't think it's got a high chance of going top 10. But both Antidote and White Iverson, have the potential, if they become viral, to absolutely make the top 10. And become yet, these would be even more viral hits, and we've had a lot of those this year. We saw that with Nasty Freestyle, with Trap Queen, to an extent. Trap Queen was a hit all its own, and Watch Me to an extent as well. We've been having a lot of those lately. And the next song that we'll be doing on Will It Go Top 10 is a very different situation from the previous two. It is a song by Rudimental, which from my understanding is a UK production group / person, featuring Ed Sheeran, called Lay It All On Me, which recently debuted in the Spotify Top 50 and on pop radio.
I'm going to say yes. Mainly because I think Ed Sheeran has been on the road all this year. Photograph, which really had a very slim chance hitting top 10, actually went top 10 for a week and blocked Cool for the Summer. It looks like radio is really...
What's a lucky top 10?
It was very lucky. But it was number 2 on overall airplay. So obviously airplay drove that single a very, very, very long way. I think with Rudimental, obviously this is a situation where this is basically an Ed Sheeran song, because his voice is the song.
The only one.
The fact that it's doing so well on Spotify, and it was just released on Spotify a couple weeks ago, I believe.
And the song, it's been in the top 50 for a few days. But it looks like it's going to be airplay driven, just like Photographs. So it's not surprising. It's top 20 on both pop and HAC radio. Actually doing much better on pop than HAC. Pop has got a bullet over 1,000. It looks to be a top 10 pop radio hit at least. And meanwhile, it's doing okay on streaming, considering that streaming traditionally lags behind the airplay. And the sales are
Yeah.
okay. It's number 49 on iTunes, right next to Antidote actually. Um, so its sales are okay for now. And I think they could build up in the future, but it would be impressive, in my opinion, for this song to become a hit, considering it it just screams like a European hit to me and not an American hit. So it would be very impressive if it goes top 10. For right now, I give it around a 40% chance to go top 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with everything you said. I mean, it could perform like Photograph and being an airplay driving hit, but I don't know. I mean, Photograph was just like they had this multi-format appeal, and it doesn't. And laid on me, it doesn't have the same appeal. So I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, and the thing is, it's already a hit in most places, or in some places of the world. Like it's top 10 in Australia, and you know sometimes Australia is like the barometer of how successful a
Hmm.
song could be later on in the future. So it's already number 7 on their official charts. It's number 6 in Ireland. 13 in the UK, which is pretty good, considering now the UK they release their singles when they go to radio, because before they would release singles to iTunes like months after they go to radio. So the fact that it's 13 in the UK, it's a good sign too. Um, so I mean, if this does go top 10, it's probably going to be a while, probably like sometime after the holidays. But yeah, I think we all can agree that it'll probably be airplay driven because of the type of
Yeah.
sound that it has. I don't see it being a huge seller, but again, you know, it streaming is taking over, so that's not a big deal.
I mean, obviously
And
there have been countless songs that have done well in the UK and obviously never crossed over. Um, just dozens, this year, and mostly in the dance genre, which
yeah.
I guess "Lay It All on Me" could be considered dance, but also pop. It's kind of like in between, and that's why I think it has at least a chance to do fairly well. I think it's definitely going to be a top 40 hit, definitely going to be a top 30 hit.
Yeah.
Past that, I don't think you can really tell. The song is in its infancy,
Um.
and if it peaks, if it peaks high, it's going to peak high potentially sometime next February or March. So it's got some time to pick up.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, he just released the music video 3 days ago. So there's a lot of potential left.
Uh-huh. All right, so that wraps it up for will it go top 10? Of course, if you have
Any
yes,
requests?
any requests as I'm blanking, then put them in the thread, post them in the thread, which can always use some activity if you want us to cover a certain song. Or tweet them to @ChartsPodcast, which I monitor, and I will take requests there. So that about does it for Will It Go Top 10 this week. So the next thing that I want to talk about is Shut Up and Dance, which I know we talked about, before on this podcast.
Oh god, I'm tired of this song.
I'm sure. I
I
mean,
know you hate this song.
yeah.
He's never gonna die or something. I mean, what the fuck? I'm not gonna say anything.
All right. Well, here I go. I'm gonna read off the stats. The song is currently in its 314th day charting on HAC, so it's less than two.
Please die.
So it's less than 2 months shy of a year. The song is number 9, so it's still in the top 10. It's been in the top 10 since March. So it reminds me of like Trap Queen's top 15 Spotify run. It was in the top 15 from March to November as well. But Shut Up and Dance actually not looking like it's going to leave the top 10 anytime soon. Really, it's far ahead of the nearest top 10 contender, which is Ellie Goulding at the moment. And it's not even decreasing. It actually has a positive bullet, which I think is hilarious. So it increased in spins.
It's annoying.
It increased in spins from last week to this week. I hear it all the time on HAC radio, and pop radio too.
Poor you.
As a recurrent, in fact, I actually love the song, so it doesn't matter. The song is number 31 on pop radio, and let me tell you why that's super impressive. Number 31 might not seem impressive, but it's pop radio songs do not tend to have very good longevity, even if they're huge. Like an example for that would be "Happy" by Pharrell. Shut Up and Dance has outlasted all three of the biggest hits this year. All three of them. Thinking Out Loud, Uptown Funk, and See You Again. See You Again is at 38. Uptown Funk is 39, and Thinking Out Loud is 63. And Shut Up and Dance is 31. And on overall radio, it's not even close. On pop radio, it's pretty close. On overall radio, it's not even close. Shut Up and Dance is number 16 on overall radio. Uptown Funk is number 34. See You Again is number 40, and Thinking Out Loud is number 50.
Wow.
So these are all huge hits. Thinking Out Loud was huge. See You Again was absolutely massive. Uptown Funk was Uptown Funk. And Shut Up and Dance is here simply just outlasting all three of these gargantuan hits. And it goes to show you that it's not, there's something about this song that clicked with the pop and HAC demographics, which obviously are the demographics that are driving Shut Up and Dance at the moment. It's still getting some play on alternative, and it's getting plenty of play at AC, where it's the number 2 song at the moment behind Fight Song.
Wow.
But it's just been supported so well by listeners, and it's just somehow we try to find out how these songs do it. What
I just smell payola. Sorry.
You think it's payola?
Yeah, they're wasting all their money of their career for payola on this single. Sorry.
Here's the thing.
I don't see any other reason.
The thing is, if you look at iTunes, it's still in the top 100, whereas it's above, or was above.
It's out. Yes, it's out. I should have mentioned that. It's not just outlasting Uptown Funk and Thinking Out Loud and See You Again on radio. It's actually outlasting all three on sales as well.
Yeah. So it's like,
yeah.
It's in addition to radio, it's actually being, it's being bought as much as like some current hits that are, coming up the charts. But it's, to me, it's just one of those songs where people just don't hate it. It's just something you can listen to because it's a very cool song. I know you hate it.
I'm not a person, right?
I know you hate it, but I know it's like one of those songs that it comes on the radio. It's like, oh, okay, this is cool. It's just something that I guess clicks well with everyone because it has that nostalgic.
It's harmless.
It has a nostalgic feel to it, like an 80s throwback song, which kind of stood out when you stack it against the type of songs that were hits this year. Like we said, See You Again, Uptown Funk, Thinking Out Loud, and then obviously the Taylor singles and the Jason Derulos. It's just one of those singles that kind of stands out on its own because it kind of sounds different from the pure pop sounds that we had. So maybe that was one of the reasons why it did so well and reasons why it continues to have so much longevity. And we're just a month away from the radio countdowns, and I expect this single to probably fly back into the top 10 on the radio charts. Or at least on overall radio.
That would be amazing.
It's just sitting there.
And even Hot 100, I think it's going to be very benefited by Christmas effect.
Yeah,
it's inoffensive, and it also carries that like infectious vibe that really appeals to the HAC AC dot. It totally fits in, and I've heard it fit in on AC radio, like in between like songs that are actually from the 80s. Fits in great. And it's kind of a feel good track for a lot of people. And it's carefree.
This bitch.
It appeals to younger and older generations. It really checks all the boxes. But it's so effective that it's outlasted literally the 3 biggest hits of the year, and it's not even close. Like, Uptown Funk, Thinking Out Loud, and See You Again are so much bigger than, like, Sugar or Trap Queen. And Sugar and Trap Queen are huge in their own right. But, like, these 3 are just so big, and Shut Up and Dance just totally outlasted them all. And it turns out that on radio, Shut Up and Dance is going to beat both Thinking Out Loud and See You Again and wind up as the number 2 song of the year. And it would have been number 1 if Uptown Funk hadn't had its crazy support from all formats, like Happy did, like urban AC, these additional formats that obviously Shut Up and Dance is never going to get played on Earth.
Exactly.
So it's remarkable for a song that's essentially that in the beginning, before it went to pop, the song was HAC driven. It's remarkable that this HAC driven song has morphed into this absolutely massive hit, and just huge.
Yep.
You can't.
Yeah, and it's impressive. It's impressive because it peaked at number 4, and it's hands down one of the biggest songs this year.
Yeah.
Giving me it reminds me of what happened with Wake Me Up in 2013, also peaking at number 4, but also having extraordinary longevity. On pretty much
So good.
on all metrics. But I mean, obviously the two are different. They're different genres. But it goes to and the fact that it's different genres kind of speaks for the fact that if your song can appeal to all generations, then it doesn't matter what genre it is, because it's going to have great longevity regardless.
Exactly.
See You Again is a pop rap song, if you will. Thinking Out Loud is it's a slow pop ballad. Uptown Funk is well, it's funk, and Shut Up and Dance, is HAC pop. So it really doesn't.
It's trash.
Well, I would.
You're pressed.
I would contest that. I don't believe.
I feel Friday Teenage right now.
I feel like trash isn't like a real genre of music. Well, except maybe that might apply to songs like.
Google it.
Huh? Okay, whatever. I won't think about that because I'm not going to be so shady, if you will. But yeah, it's an extraordinary case, and I'm very curious to see how it does over the next few months with the holiday effect as well. So that about wraps it up for today's podcast, episode 8.
And since we're about to finish this year, I think one idea of this next episode should be about our predictions for year-end Hot 100.
Yep.
What do you think?
The chart year's. Well, maybe we can do that next week, because the chart year's going to end at the end of November. And I'm sure we'll have another episode out in the next 21 days. So yes, within the next episode, probably episode 9. I think what we're going to do is we're going to have AMA's predictions. We're going to have year-end predictions, as in for the chart year, not for the whole year, because obviously the whole year is January to December. The chart year is December to November. So we'll have predictions for that. It should be close, around the 9 to 11 spots. Love Me Like You Do, Cheerleader, Watch Me. It should be a close battle. So yeah, looking forward to that, and looking forward to episode 9. And until then, take care.